it sort of won awards. The story I'm reading you is from it. I hope you enjoy it. That's the intro. You can buy it actually, you know, and also if you buy it, it means I can actually go home to Britain. If you don't buy it, I can't afford the flight back.
But then we keep you, yeah.
Yeah,
your wife might check.
Okay. Oh, hang on. That's right. So, I hope you enjoy this. Okay. Listen. There was once a little boy who was in love with love. It was the first thing he thought of when he woke in the morning. It was what he hoped to dream of when he went to sleep at night. At school, he'd think of love during his lessons. Geography, physics, gym. He didn't see the point of geography or physics. He didn't see the point of gym. Love was so much important, surely, and so much more interesting. He didn't see why they couldn't just study that. His grades weren't very good. Of course, the little boy had no first-hand experience of love. He was, after all, a little boy. But on his 8th birthday, his parents had bought him a radio, all of his very own. He kept it in his bedroom. After he'd done his homework, he'd done his chores, it was to the bedroom he'd go. He'd lie on the bed, turn on the radio, and listen to the love songs that came out. And there were so many. He listened to the ones that were sheer celebrations of love, telling the world how great love made them feel, and how unashamed they were of that. They were in love, and that was all there was to it. There'd be drums, possibly, and loud guitars, and the songs would be fast, and the singers would sound as if they were almost laughing over the words. These songs made the boy happy, and when he was a little older, he listened to the other love songs, the songs that were about wanting love, crying out for love, wondering where love had gone, or even more despairing, about being in love that wasn't love after all, or was love but the wrong kind of love. These songs were much more confusing. They made the boy sad. And in a funny way, they made him happy too, even happier, somehow, than the happy songs had. He learnt what love was, a matter of getting the right notes in the right order and hoping the right words wouldn't get in the way and spoil everything. By the time he was 12, after countless evenings of diligent study, the boy had heard every single love song in the world, and he liked them all. In his favourites, of course he did. He had 289 favourites. But there wasn't one love song he didn't respect and which hadn't taught him something. He never meant to compose a song of his own, but one night, as he dreamt about love, a tune began to play in his head. He'd absorbed so many songs, they were much part of his life as breathing or eating, and somehow the best bits of the best of them got mixed up and produced something new. He woke with a start. He didn't know how to write music, didn't know how to tape his voice, so he stayed up all night, walking around the house, singing the new song under his breath over and over again so he wouldn't forget it. When his parents got up at dawn, they were shocked to see their little boy shivering with exhaustion, the catchiest of melodies on his lips. They listened to the song. The boy couldn't really sing very well, and he had to explain where the drums and guitars came in, but the parents exchanged glances in awe. "That," said his daddy gravely, "is a love song, all right." Daddy didn't go to work that day. He phoned a friend who knew someone who might be able to help. Daddy took his little boy to see him, and for a fee, the stranger wrote down the song with staves and treble clefs. "Is that it?" said Daddy. "That's his song?" "That's his song," said the man, pocketing the money, "and we never met, right?" And the little boy took the paper on which his song was now inscribed. He didn't know it like that, but it still gave him a thrill of pride to see it. And then he just keeled over, fast asleep right there and then. He really was very tired. Daddy went to the post office for the right forms and filled them in, and the next day, as instructed, he took the little boy into the city to get his love song registered. Mummy made them sandwiches for the trip. The government buildings were stone and grey. There was nobody on reception. A notice at the front told prospective songsmiths to take a ticket and wait until their number was called. It also said that there must be no smoking and no littering, and in particular, the humming of unregistered music was expressly forbidden. Daddy and the little boy took seats. A number was called, and a man at the far side of the room got up, stretched, and shuffled through swing doors down a corridor. The little boy calculated that there were 128 people in the queue ahead of them. There were no other children in the waiting room, mostly men with beards and raincoats, each holding in their hand a a post office form and sheets of music paper. "Is everyone here to get their song registered?" asked the boy. "I think they must be." "Why do we need to get songs registered?" "Well," said Daddy, and handed him a sandwich, "otherwise it'd be chaos, wouldn't it? If you look around," the little boy did, "without registration there'd be another 128 songs in the world for us to listen to." "That doesn't sound so bad." 128 doesn't sound bad, agreed Daddy, "but that's just today. Tomorrow there'll be another 128, maybe more. You'd end up with a world that has so many love songs in it, we'd be swamped in them. We wouldn't know what to listen to. We might miss out on the 1,000 good love songs we'd enjoy because we couldn't find them and missed all the bad ones we wouldn't." The boy liked his sandwich. It was tuna. It was the 17th best sandwich filling in the world. And at last it was the boy's turn. His daddy nudged him from his drowse. "Come on," said Daddy, and offered him his hand. The boy was really too old now to need his hand held, but he took it gratefully. They walked through the swing doors and down a long corridor. "Come in," said the clerk inside a cubicle, and then on seeing the boy, "Composers only, that's protocol. You'll have to leave your little boy outside." "Well, I'm not the composer," said Daddy. My little boy is." The clerk blinked in surprise, just the once, then regained his composure. The clerk held out his hand for the form, Daddy gave it to him, and the clerk read it briefly. Then the clerk held out his hand for the song, and taking it, fed it into the computer on his desk. "Aren't you going to read it?" said Daddy. "No need, the computer is wholly impartial. It's not affected by quirks of personal taste. It measures the song on timbre, metre, rhythm and cultural importance." The computer whirred as it made its assessment, and the clerk smiled thinly at the little boy. "Shan't be long now." And then the computer made a happy little ping. This time the clerk didn't bother to hide his surprise and blinked repetitively. "Does that mean," asked the boy, "that my song is one of the top 1,000 in the world?" "Yes," said the clerk. "Yes, it would appear so. Yes, if I just check my... Yes." He tapped away at his keyboard. "It's 914th, he said. "Well done." With a new respect, the clerk went on to explain to the little boy that the government would now be purchasing his song and all future rights appertaining. The boy would receive a handsome stipend once a month, index-linked to adjust for inflation, and he should start listening to the radio because he'd be hearing his own song playing there soon. "But what happens," asked the boy, "to the song that's 914th already?" "Well," said the clerk, "that'll become 115th. It'll shuffle down the rankings. They'll all shuffle down till they reach number 1,000. "And what happens," asked the boy, "to number 1,000? "Quite right," said the clerk approvingly, but the boy couldn't see why. He'd only asked him a simple question. "I'll deal with that right now." And he turned to his computer, tapped on his keyboard for the shortest few seconds, and erased Elvis Presley's Blue Suede Shoes forever. On the bus ride home, Daddy realised they could now have afforded a taxi. Taxis were the 14th best transportation in the world, whereas buses were only at 347. "Never mind," he laughed. "Taxis from this point on. I'm proud of you, son. Not a bad day's work, eh?" And the little boy agreed. "I'm going to write some more songs now," he said. "I'm already getting ideas." He didn't have time for writing for a while. The boy was famous. Now, truth to tell, the press wouldn't usually have taken much interest. Every few months, someone or other was breaking a song into the bottom hundreds of the canon, shoving aside others only just put in. It may have been the 914th best song in the world. It was also the 87th worst, and that didn't sound half so impressive. But the boy was 12 years old. That was something which caught the listener's imagination, and his song was re-recorded in different styles to sate the interest. Reggae, rap, a cappella. The boy was referred to as a genius in the making, a wunderkind, a veritable Mozart. Mozart was a famous composer. He'd got no less than 14 songs into the top 1,000. He was really very good indeed. At school he'd been so dreamy he'd barely made an impression, but now he was the epitome of romance. He won the hearts of all the girls and quite a few of the teachers as well. One or two got quite into trouble over him. He barely noticed. He looked on in some bemusement as his classmates wept for his love, as his former mistress was disciplined by a tribunal and put on probation. And he wasn't at the school for long. He had no need for geography or physics or gym anymore, and the boy could now afford a special education in which he could focus upon his gifts. He learned how to write in musical notation. He learned to pick apart the songs he'd once enjoyed so uncritically. He wrote a few songs, and of course everyone in Academe buzzed with expectation. What fresh classics might he be concocting under their very noses? The boy always destroyed these efforts, saying that they weren't good enough. He wasn't yet ready to give the world a second masterpiece. By the time he graduated, his original song had slipped down the rankings, was now 933rd. One of his fellow students managed to catch his attention and then to catch his heart. She was the envy of all her friends and received a couple of death threats from the most jealous. As they walked down the aisle, with his mummy and daddy looking so proud, and the boy, no longer quite a boy, no longer quite a wunderkind, the song that was played was his own. The bride had chosen it especially. She said it was that song that had made her fall in love with him. Of course it had been. It was, at this point, it was the 947th best love song in the world. The fact was, the boy didn't like the song very much. No matter how much it was digitally remastered or re-remastered, he heard it for what it was. A melange of other people's songs that had just got lucky. There was love in it, and it was his love, but it wasn't the love it pretended to be. A love for the love that others feel is still a borrowed love, it's not love at all. The boy knew he had to find within his heart some passion that was sincere. His wife, he knew that she loved him and that ought to make him love her, but was it really a love strong enough to produce a good tune? He worked on it. He studied her from every angle. He adored the nape of her neck. He'd delight in the kink of her nose. He taught himself to feel little ecstasies over the jokes she made he knew really weren't that funny at all. And at last, he thought his preparation was over. He wrote a new song. He read it back critically. He priced it apart, put it back together, tweaked the chorus, softened the guitars a bit. He thought about destroying it, and he knew that how much that would hurt him to lose even one note of it. It was finished, his second attempt at love. His previous effort now ranked at 974. As a composer in the top 1,000, he could bypass the usual registration process. He didn't have to queue. He'll come to the city with his post office form and his sheet music, and no matter how busy the office, the doors would be flung open wide for him. "Hello, sir," said the clerk, "and welcome." The clerk fed the new song into the computer whirred, but it didn't ping, it grunted. "Oh," said the clerk, checking his readout, much surprised. "Better luck next time," and took the song from the feeder tray and shredded it before the young composer's eyes. Maybe his love had been too clean. He hadn't fought hard enough for it. He began to have affairs. Nothing major at first, just the odd grope in the back of pubs. He was no longer hailed as a genius, but telling a pretty girl who'd written the 982nd best love song in the world was an icebreaker, notwithstanding. Seeking further inspiration, he moved on to afternoon trysts, and then evening trysts, and then weekend trysts. A 5-day fling with identical blonde twins provoked him to compose a full 7.5-minute ballad. The computer rejected it, as it did all his other songs. The doors of the office were still flung open wide to him, but with markedly less enthusiasm. His wife left him. She said that she no longer knew him. She said that maybe she never had. He wrote a song about how that made him feel. The computer didn't care. His daddy died, quite suddenly, of a heart attack. There was no warning. His mummy, who had never raised a voice to him, who had bought him a radio and made him tuna sandwiches, told him that his father had been so appalled by the way he treated his own wife, the shame had killed him. The composer cried for days. He wept it all out into a new song. The computer barely gave it a blip, let alone the much-sought ping. The clerk studied the readout and said, yes, the computer could see the composer in question was upset, and it offered him its condolences, but I didn't mean he'd written a good song. One day, a bar pianist in Portugal hit the news. Afonso Gutierrez had been playing his own songs to customers as they ate their tapas. He offered 14 songs he offered 14 songs. 8 were rejected, so left an unprecedented 6 that were accepted automatically by the Lisbon computer. The pianist was 34 years old, but still held up as a new wunderkind, a new Mozart. All 6 of the songs ranked higher than our composer's effort, which now came to rest at a precarious 997. The composer knew he did a song into the canon immediately before he lost his placing altogether, and for the next few nights worked hard on his latest masterpiece. He pushed and prodded at all of his feelings, dredging his heart for something that might sound beautiful. But it was too late. By the time he took his new work into the city, everything had changed. Fired up by his success, Gutierrez had returned to his bar, written up for submission a further 58 of the songs he'd scribbled away over the years. All 58 were accepted. When our composer reached the offices, he found he had to queue like everybody else. He had to take a ticket and wait his turn. When he at last reached a cubicle, tired and angry, it was only to find his childhood success had been erased, deleted from the computer, wiped from the world's iPods. The clerk apologised. He fed the new song into the computer. It was rejected. He vowed he'd never write music again. He needed a career, something permanent, something he could commit to. He applied for a job at the local McDonald's. McDonald's is a fast food chain specialising in burgers, and the 606th best in the world. And he worked hard there. You know, he began the week as a mere team member, but by Thursday he was team leader. He had 5 gold stars on his name badge, and he was on a roll. Everyone was in awe. I've not seen anyone climb the ladder of convenience food industry so quickly. He was astonishing, a wunderkind. He loved his job. He flipped the burgers and wiped the tables and gave service with a smile. This was something he was good at. The restaurant played an endless stream of Muzak, simplified versions of the love songs he'd once admired and competed with. And sometimes they played Gutierrez. One day the televisions all reported breaking news. The world had a new best love song. Now, nothing composed in the last 50 years had even made it near the top 10. There was something so established about those classics that was just hard to beat. But the latest from Afonso Gutierrez had taken the #1 spot, knocking into second place some ditty by Verdi. Always wanting to shy away from publicity, Gutierrez had only reluctantly agreed to a TV interview in which he mumbled in broken English he was pleased people liked his song. People more than liked it. It was adored. Everyone played it for their loved ones, and although doing that was immediately a cliche, it somehow wasn't, because the song seemed to speak personally to whoever heard it. It was universal, but it was also specifically about them. The former child prodigy, former composer, gave the song a listen. He didn't much care for it. He couldn't have explained why he caught that flight to Lisbon, why from there he took a 7-hour coach trip into the Portuguese hinterland. He didn't know what he was going to do when he found Gutierrez. Only that by now Gutierrez had 304 songs in the top 1,000. And if that wasn't bad enough, the other composers had cottoned on. They were writing their songs in the style of Gutierrez. They weren't quite as good as Gutierrez, of course, but they were perfectly suited for adaptation as background music, for elevators, for supermarkets. There was suddenly a strange, sticky homogeneity to the music of the world, and there was a new name already coined for it. It was used freely and without shame by all the critics and all the disc jockeys, and that name was Gutierrez-esque. He'd been working so hard at his Big Macs to make a bit of money. Now he'd blown all his savings. Some of it had gone on the fare to Lisbon. The rest had gone on the gun. The maitre d' asked if he had a reservation. "No, I'm sorry, can you squeeze me in?" "I'm sorry, senor, tonight we are fully booked." "I see, can I reserve a table for tomorrow?" "Senor, we are fully booked for the next 5 months. Senor Gutierrez, he is very popular." "Please, I need to see him. I phoned all the way from England." "We have many people from England, senor, from Japan, from Australia, from the Americas, from all over the world." "I'm begging you. I'm a composer too. I compose love songs. I used to compose love songs. We're the same, him and I. We're the same. Please. Please." The maitre d' let him in. He was given a little table at the back with 2 chairs. He looked at the menu. The wine cost a fortune. He couldn't afford it. He ordered a carafe. And at last, the lights dimmed, and Gutierrez appeared. He shuffled towards the piano. He was just a little man. A little man. The team manager from McDonald's carefully took the gun from his coat pocket. Gutierrez frowned at the piano, as it was something he was trying to remember, trying to place. He raised a finger, he hesitated, he dropped it onto a key. Plonk. It was a C. He thought about this, then raised the finger once more, thought a bit further, then dropped it onto the F, then back onto the C, then back onto the F. He gave this some consideration. He took his hand away from the piano altogether, stared at it once more, then raised his hand, raised his finger, held it in the air, and let it fall at last. Back onto the C, then faster, another C, another F, another C, then the single finger, exploring further, excited, picking out other notes, at random, a mess. Our hero wanted to laugh. Gutierrez wasn't worth killing. It wasn't worth the price of a wine carafe. He got up to leave. No, said the woman beside him. Yet no, there was a woman beside him, and someone had taken that second chair. He couldn't make her out in the dim light. She said something to him in a whisper. What? Escute. Listen. So he listened. And there wasn't much to be impressed by. Not for a while. But then Gutierrez visibly relaxed. The notes began to smooth. They still seemed random, at least at first. Not so discordant now, but, you know, even pleasing to the ear. Nothing special, of course. Nothing of any worth. But then that was all stripped away. It was as if it had been a game all along. Those notes weren't random. They'd been building up to something, building up a rhythm. You could hear those simple C majors, those Fs, every now and again being picked out as if winking at an audience who took them for granted before. We're building up to something, they said. We're building up to. And here on the top of them there was... He gasped and was flooded by the music. He didn't know what Gutierrez was singing about. He didn't have to. He didn't have to know anything. He wasn't a composer anymore, or a man who had once been a composer and had given up, or a man who had once been a composer and could never give up, not really, no matter how much he failed. He was a little boy. He was a little boy who listened to love songs. He was a little boy in love with love. He turned to the woman, and he could barely see her. It dawned on him this was because he was crying. She put what she was holding onto the table, and with her hand now freed, reached for his. He looked at her closely, and he knew that he loved her. It wasn't that she was beautiful, it wasn't that, but she was there. She was there amongst the music. Listen, she mouthed, and he nodded happily. She held his hand tightly. It was smaller than his, but strong, stronger. He saw that she was crying too. He saw what she put upon the table. He saw that she too had come with a gun. He didn't know what he could ever say to her, whether he could ever find the right words, but for that moment he was in love, and it was the fullest and richest love he'd ever felt. He gazed at her, and she gazed at him, and they listened. They listened and hoped the love song would never end. Thank you very much. I'll never ever read that again. It's odd, I've been reading that around the world a bit because I keep on having to go and do things, and it's hard, that one. And that's my last one because my new book is out in a few months, and that's my old book, so that's it. Brilliant, I can bin that, which is wonderful, because this is now so ragged, it's full of notes, I keep on changing words and cutting bits and trying to make it actually so it makes more sense. And yeah, I can do I thank you for being my final audience for that. That's really, and for listening without walking out and throwing things at me. It's really nice. Anything you want to ask me at all, or questions at all, or explanations, or seeking we say sorry for anything? Yes, Mike.
Since I came in just as you were beginning, I didn't know if you prefaced the story anyway. Just wanted to.
I didn't much. It's actually called. I didn't even say that. It's called One Last Love Song.
Okay. And is that in that book? Or
yeah,
is that...
love songs for the Shy and Cynical. They're all sort of about love in some way, and all get to with music as well if I can make them so. And that's the sort of final story. And it's it's done well. It won the Shirley Jackson Award last year, and the British Fantasy Award, and the Edge Hill Readers' Prize. which is rather nice, and it's quite good actually. And I shouldn't say that. I'm actually rather proud of it. It's sort of quite, I mean, it's odd because I'm sort of seen as a horror writer by some editors and a comedy writer by others. My background was writing theatre comedy, and I wrote a lot of TV and theatre for many, many years. And of course I got into the sci-fi thing by writing Doctor Who once. And because I wrote Doctor Who and brought back Daleks, suddenly I got commissions to write books which were expected to be a bit more genre-friendly. And actually I find that's my natural thing anyway. I mean, I really love writing slightly skew-with stories, and it's great. I really love writing prose now. So yeah, and my new one, which is called Everyone's Just So Special, is out in, yes, it's in July.
So that'll be your third collection?
Third collection, then I move on to a novel. And the World Fantasy Award winning thing, because my first one won the World Fantasy Award, and that's kind of helped as well. It's odd how you suddenly get really redefined by just doing, because I would never actually have thought I'd ever have written a book in my life actually, and it's great fun. It's got so much more power than doing television. Television's horrible. Books are great. And just write, and then they come out. Well, they have so far. Obviously, that's now going to go horribly wrong. But it's lovely. Yeah. Anything else at all, or no? Yes, Laura.
Are you doing anything else while you're in Toronto?
It's a good question. I am actually, Laura. Niagara Falls would be good. I'm doing another reading, but not that ever again. I'm reading for my new book at somewhere on Tuesday evening, and I think you know where it is because I don't.
The Augusta House at 8 o'clock. Everyone should come.
It's a sort of cheesing type event because I'm writing for cheesing for next year. I'm doing a thing. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. I think it might be a sort of novella, but it might not. It's got a title. I'm not quite sure what the title means yet, but I gave the title and they said yes, and I said, oh, okay. It's called The 7 Times My Sister Died, which is obviously a happy, funny story because I like my sister, and it will be quite fun to write her death 7 times. So yes, there's that thing tomorrow night. It'll be a different story. Tuesday night. Yeah. It's a different story, so you've not already heard it. It's about an air stewardess. I do it as an air stewardess. I do the whole thing as an air stewardess. One from Louisiana. You can imagine me as because that would be my other life if I could be a woman and an air stewardess. That'd be perfect. So yes, that's what I'm doing. Thank you, Laura.
Great.
Yeah.
And I'll be there.
Will you?
Yes.
Hopefully some of others. That'd be great. Yeah. So thank you for selling your event. I thought really subtly, actually.
Yeah.
No one noticed. No one, I'm not underlining it at all. So, anything else at all that you want to ask me to explain or to justify? Or no? Okay. Oh yes, Colleen.
Yes. Like for Tiny Deaths, did you say I'm going to do an anthology that's related to death, or were you asked to do an anthology related to death or love, or is it just?
I really love short stories. Short stories are my big thing actually. It's a great passion of mine. But I love short story collections which seem to have a uniform theme. I just find that a bit more interesting. And I was asked. I was very, very lucky. I got asked to write because of Doctor Who. I think a publisher wrote to me saying, "We're doing a collection of short stories. Would you write a story for our book?" And I wrote back saying, "No, I don't write prose, actually. If you check my bio, you'd find that out." And I thought, actually, with the people in the collection, Hanif Qureshi was one of them, and really leading British writers, and I thought, I should really give it a go, because it should be fun. And I loved it. And that was the first story from this new book. And they said to me, "Could you do a whole book of these by March?" And I said, "Yeah, could I?" And I just wanted you to think this will be my only ever book, because I thought that this will never sell. And I told them, "It won't sell, And they said, we know it's a short story collection, but do it anyway." And I call it Tiny Deaths because actually I thought it was a joke. Because you see, it was really a little bit about sex.
Yeah.
And I thought, because I used to be a translator, I used to be French and Italian translator for a couple of years, and I thought how funny it would be if anyone ever translates my book and they have to translate it as orgasm. And I thought, ha ha ha, because I'm very, very childish. And it hasn't been translated anyway. But so it was about death and sex, really, that book. But in a sort of rather charming, happy way. And then after that, the other offers just came in. It was really nice. There was an expectation, I think I'll probably do short story collections every few years, hopefully all my life, because I just find them so much fun to write. And they're quite quick. I know that sounds awful, but actually, because they're very hard short stories, but actually the amount of energy of going out there and writing, because I walk around London with my iPod on, I go into art galleries and things. It's about 3 or 4 days solid work getting a good first draft out, and that's better than doing, you know, movies, which I find very hard to do, because I write movie screenplays, and that takes months. And novels sound really scary, which I'm about to start doing, because I've got a couple of novel commissions. And those, you know, that's a lot of work, so, yeah.
The novels, like, the same sort of quirky stuff as the short stories?
Yeah, the first novel's about the sound of music. It's about the one fond trapped child who can't sing and joins the Hitler, he joins the Nazis. And he starts having an affair with this awful woman who comes into the house, a sort of ex-nun, ex-prostitute who comes into the house and is obviously taking away his family. And it's quite odd, but it's not, you know, I mean, yes, I like playing around with genre a bit. Again, I don't think I'm really a sci-fi writer. Occasionally I drift into sci-fi and even horror a bit, but I just find just weird, funny things amuse me, really. Yeah, and the other book is about Bambi. It's about what happens when in all the movies of the world, Bambi, the mother stops dying, and how that affects all 20th century culture. And it's actually really about the way that the US have actually influenced 20th century. You know, it's quite a serious, odd book, but it also has Bambi in it as a character trying to find ways of killing his mother. because in the forest, all his other friends lost their mothers ages ago, and there's this annoying deer who won't die. And so that's a strange book.
Yes.
That'll be out, I think, 2013. I've not really got very far through that yet, but it seemed people seem to want it, the publishers. So that's silly of them. So no, it's good. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm carrying on with that. And yeah, it's nearly 3, so I should probably let you all go. But as I say, if you want to, you know, oh, thank you. If you want to buy my book, obviously I would, you know, be your friends for life. And I would actually leave Canada, because at the moment the problem I've got is with my luggage. They're quite, you know, because I've got weight of books I bought here, they won't let me leave. If I don't get rid of these books, I'm trapped, and you wouldn't want that to happen. You know, so you know, anyone who wants to buy a book, I'd be absolutely over the moon to sell you one. Thank you. Thanks for being such a good audience. It's really nice of you. Right. Okay.